Hey guys, welcome back. Robocraft early access coverage. This is episode 97. I'm Enigmas, and today we're continuing with the Panther B. It's been a long, difficult road, and it's not over yet. We built the framework in the last episode so that we could kind of place everything and see where it was going to be. We could also get an idea for the CPU requirements, having everything that's going to use a lot of CPU per piece in place already, so that if we start running out of CPU, we're going to know right away, because there's few things more frustrating than getting to the end of a build and all you have to do is place one more component and it won't fit because you're out of CPU and you have to go around and make sacrifices elsewhere. At least we know up front that we're going to have to make sacrifices if we have everything in place, and all we have left to do is connect it all together. Now, again, as I was discussing in the last episode, this isn't the ideal kind of situation for a build. Normally when we do builds, we like to make them as robust as possible, and that's one of the goals that we try and stick to. And if it's not big and beefy and capable of taking a pounding, we rework it until it is, or we scrap the bot. That's always been the way that I've done things. In this case, we have to acknowledge that the size of the bot, the CPU requirements for all the components, and the size of each component forcing that large bot size means that it's not going to be as robust as we would like it to be, but we still want to kind of keep an eye to survivability when we're designing things. You can see here we're kind of building around the area where the legs connect to the chassis and also where one of the rotor blades connects, and building it out so that it's at least 3 wide is kind of the goal. I figured would be pretty reasonable in terms of giving us above average chances of keeping components when we get, incidental fire from here and there. There's not much we can do against, the railgunner on the ground who's decided that we're a delicious target, because we're too big and we're too slow in the air to actually relocate out of the way if we get targeted by a railgunner when we're out in the open. If we get targeted by a drone, we're basically done for. If we get targeted by a bomber, there's all these different kinds of scenarios that will happen on a regular basis, and there's no real meaningful defense for it unless you want to sacrifice all of your offense in the process. And that's kind of the decision that we make when we build this bot, and I just want to make sure people are mentally prepared for that when they go into a situation and things start getting destroyed, because there's not much to be done about it. So keeping in mind the simple rule, try and make everything 3 wide wherever possible. Using the knuckles like we've talked about with just, a pair of prisms. You can see one right where we're working here, to join a couple of sections together in a way that otherwise wouldn't be possible using the prisms. Really simple, straightforward stuff, and then just carry it right the way throughout the entire bot. And what's going to end up happening, I can tell you now, is we're going to run out of CPU very, very early in this whole process, because 12 tier 6 rotor blades is a lot of CPU. So what I was doing, and I didn't bother, wasting your time including each and every jump into the practice map, is I would, every once in a while when we got to a point where we were running out of CPU, I would take it into the practice map and I would see if it was still lifting well. You can actually tell the difference between a helicopter bot, a bot with, using rotors to fly, when it's, really well below the maximum lift capacity versus kind of nearing that lift capacity. There's a very different feel to the way the bot not only ascends but also handles when it's in the air. And so what I would do is I would jump in and make sure it felt like it was still having no difficulty lifting what was already on the bot, so that we could, if necessary, justify removing rotor blades to free up CPU and or tier 10 prisms, because we're going to run out of those as well. Over 600 set aside just for this bot, and we're going to run out before we even get halfway through to the back. Kind of a tragedy, but it's unavoidable. It's just one of those things we have to... We could do things cheap, or we could do things well. There's really no in between. It's one of those life lessons. You can't do things on the cheap and do things well at the same time. So realistically speaking, by the time we get to the end of this, it's just going to be like a skeleton. It's going to be 3 wide sections leading from the different guns and rotor blades, legs, and the cockpit section, to keep things together for as long as we possibly can, and allow us to get where we need to be to start dishing out punishment. That's really the best that we can do. It's pretty much a understood kind of thing that the sniper kind of role in any sort of PvP environment is sort of the glass cannon, and we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we're not such a glass cannon that we get shattered long before we have a chance to fire. That's basically all we can hope to accomplish at this point. And right now I'm finding that all the red when things disconnect is a little bit distracting, so I'm trying to get things reconnected just for the sake of getting some normal color in so that I can see. Like, for example, you can see here when we got the majority of the chassis in place, we discovered that the railguns, the front railguns, aren't attached at all, which is a good thing to know before you get into a match, that your guns aren't attached. But it's not something that's going to be difficult to fix. We're just kind of building out. And anytime I'm building something, there's always those things that you notice along the way that can be a real distraction if you kind of let yourself be distracted by them. It's really easy to get sidetracked, and that's sometimes a lot of the fun. If you're just doing it, you know, by yourself, building whatever, having a blast, and getting sidetracked but still enjoying yourself, then that's fantastic. It's when you're recording it and trying to present it to people as something that makes sense as you're going along, that getting sidetracked is not necessarily the most helpful thing. So we're just about well, we just joined the two halves, first of all, which is kind of exciting, but now we've got to get the front two rotor blades connected, and then we can start thinking about moving back through this stuff. So there's nothing really complicated going on here. It's really straightforward. Where it gets a little bit tricky is where large components start to intersect, and you have a limited amount of space in which to place blocks, and you don't really necessarily know with absolute certainty where those places are that you can place blocks until you try, and then you basically get an idea of where they are and you can start putting things together. We were very lucky to be able to build the upright between the top gun and the bottom frame here. You can't really see it from where we are. There it is. We were pretty lucky to be able to get that built in the first place, so I'm not necessarily too concerned if it's not 3 wide in every segment, but it's not bad. It's doing all right. And here we're getting ready for another 3 wide section that's going to lead back to the middle guns, and of course we're using mirror mode, so whatever we're doing on this side is being built on the other side as well, which is great. It's fantastic. It's a wonderful time saver, but it's also takes a little bit of getting used to just how quickly you go through blocks, because it's easy to forget that you're basically every block that you're placing is 2. So we're just kind of building away. And I realized I brought this whole segment all the way back, and then looked up and, oh yeah, we have to allow for the gun elevation. It's about a 3 block gap between the front gun and the middle gun, and then another 3 block gap between the middle gun and the rear guns. And that's, again, just so that we can get all of the guns lined up on a target that we're looking across at or down on without the guns firing into the backs of one another. And I've actually got some match footage that will allow you guys to see just what kind of a tilt we're going to get with the orientation of the front legs. Just the way that everything is set up, just by landing, the bot tilts up a little bit, which is kind of neat. It's a nice little thing to have going on, with, of course, the important drawback that we need to note is that the front legs are extremely vulnerable. Like it'll be very easy, and I think very common, to lose 3 or 4 out of 4 legs on a regular basis when we start taking fire, when we're peeked over a ledge. Not much we can do. Now this is the lower armor section on the pilot seat area, the pod, the cockpit, whatever you want to call it. And we're just borrowing the blocks so that we can finish things out here. Before this is done, we'll have time to build or to run a few more dailies and get a little bit more RP, buy a few more blocks, and hopefully level up a little bit to free up some CPU so that we can get done with everything that needs doing. It's a big bot. It's a very big bot. So we're getting to the point now, almost, where we're going to head on into the practice map, and you can see what's going on there, and then there'll be some more modifications after that you can watch. What we're going to end up doing for the next episode is we're going to be removing some more rotors, and we're also going to be dismantling the framework that held those rotors in place to free up CPU and to free up tier 10 blocks so that we can use them. I'm pretty confident that we'll have a reasonable amount of redundancy with 6 to 8 tier 6 rotors instead of the 12 that we have now, which is pretty ridiculous. 12 is a lot. 12 is a tremendous amount when you think of the lift and the testing that we did. As long as the numbers are similar, since we did that testing, it's 12 tier 6 rotors is about the equivalent of 6 tier 10 rotors, which is, yeah, that's a lot. So I'm pretty sure that we can spare some without feeling like, you know, one lost rotor is going to send us crashing to the ground when we finally get into the real matches. We're in sacrifice mode, basically, just because of the size of the bot and everything that we wanted to put on it. There's only so much that we can fit, so now we have to start making decisions about what we can remove based on the priorities of what's more important. Do we have everything made with tier 10 blocks and everything connected well, or do we have a bunch of iStocks with tier 9 blocks and all of the components that we may or may not actually need? So it's kind of one of those things where we have to stop and think what we would like to have versus what we need to have. So this is giving you the beginnings of an idea of what this thing is going to look like, sort of when it's done. The white blocks are still not telling much of a tale, but the black ones in front, kind of, it's lean, it's a little bit naughty, and I'm hopeful that when we get everything done, it's going to look sharp and behave well too. But you know how it is. We could do everything that we can to build it to the best of our ability. We get into a match and we realize it's just so far from functional, there's not much that we can do. So I'll let you guys watch the rest of this, a little bit of match footage, and then, like I say, a little bit more tweaking after that. In the next episode, we're going to try and finish the frame with all of the tier 10 prisms, and hopefully position ourselves so that we can start getting into some matches with this guy as soon as possible. So if you want to be notified when I add those videos, you can always subscribe to my channel, and you can also follow me on social media. Links for social media always in the information section below the video. Please leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.